Welcome to Wake the Fuck Up Wednesday. It's looking like it's going to be sunnier today than it was yesterday, which I'm super stoked on because I was kind of over having fucking rain and turning on the heater yesterday. Anyway, what's up, everybody? Good morning. So, oh, hey, Chris, what's up? So, today I wanted to talk about the second arrow. Or another way to put it is like unnecessary suffering. So in Buddhism, there's the concept of the second arrow. It's a big teaching that gets used a lot, and I can see why, because I use it probably like every day, right? Every day, all day. I'm like, oh, here I go, shooting the second arrow at myself. So if we're going to talk about the second arrow, we need to kind of back up a little and understand sort of one of the main concepts that underlie it. And that is that life is going to have some suffering. That's like the first noble truth, right? That the truth of that suffering exists. And I think a lot of people go like, man, that is such a fucking downer. Like, why would you have that as the first noble truth? Like, isn't that just kind of depressing? And I just want to encourage you to look at it like, because this has been my experience with this truth, is it helps you live life more fully. Because our suffering comes from being born in a body that breaks bones, gets cuts, gets hurt, gets sick, eventually grows old and dies. And it's also from being born as a human, and we are social creatures, and we interact with other fucked up humans, right? And they like betray us and lie to us and break up with us and all this stuff. And it's just part of this human existence, suffering. And we suffer so much when we resist the truth of that. When we're like, why am I suffering right now? Why is this happening to me? This should not be happening. And when we can recognize that this is actually part of existence, then we don't feel as victimized, right? When we can accept that shit's going to get hard sometimes, that we're going to suffer, that then we can more savor when life is awesome, right? We can savor when things are going well because we know how precious it is. And I find I live life more fully because I'm not attached to wishing reality was different than it was and obsessing about what's wrong when there's really nothing wrong. We're just like human beings having a human experience. Yeah. So that's like a whole other podcast in and of itself. But the pod that's going to drop tomorrow is about the two arrows. So the two arrows, Buddha said, you know, um, we get shot with the first arrow and feel the pain. Why is it that we shoot a second arrow onto ourselves? And where that what that's referring to is when we experience pain, rather than just experiencing that pain, not just physical pain, but emotional pain, mental pain, rather than just experiencing that, we also have an experience of wishing that we weren't reacting the way we did. We tell a big story about the pain and what happened to us, right? And we create all of this mental anguish kind of optionally. And that's the second arrow. So the first arrow is that suffering exists, that it's going to happen, and then it happens to us. And then the second arrow is, okay, he did that because he thinks I'm stupid, or he did that because he doesn't love me, or she said that to me because she doesn't respect me, or that didn't work out because I'm stupid, or I made a huge mistake, I always fuck up, or I'm never going to be able to follow through. So instead of just having the hard thing happen to us, the breakup, the snarky comment, the getting fired, the traffic, Or in my case the other day, like having to type in my fucking password like 10 times. I was just like, really? Really? Do I really have to do this over and over and over? That we create a whole drama around it. Here, I can't see y'all's comments. Hold on. Go in here. There we go. I think I can see it better. Hey, Charlotte. Hey, Danira. Now I can see like some of the other people that are on. So, first arrow is we feel the pain. Second arrow is we make it a hell of a lot fucking harder than it needs to be, right? Okay. So, one way that we can oversimplify this is we can say, oh, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. You may have heard that phrase. And that's a good like start to this kind of, right? It's kind of a good way to somewhat explain what's going on because it's sort of like, okay, life shit's going to happen to us, but suffering is optional. Where that can be misconstrued is when we have someone thinking, oh, shit happens to me and I'm not supposed to react to it. And we have to first define react and respond, okay? So, react is, in the way I want to use it, react is where we have this default way of reacting to a scenario. So, someone cuts you off and you go, fuck, what the fuck? Like reacting in that way. And you get mad, maybe you yell or something like that, right? Responding comes in the pause. Like instead of having this sort of default mode, automatic process happen, we can say, okay, I'm going to pause a minute and I'm going to choose a different way of responding, like what's actually happening here. And then we can respond in a more skillful way that better serves us and the situation, right? It's like me losing my shit the other day and like yelling at my computer and like pounding on the keyboard was not helping anything, right? And so, how can I more skillfully respond instead of react? But when people hear the story of the second arrow, they sometimes think like, oh, so someone's supposed to break up with me, or um, or I lose my job, or I have so much shit to do and I'm not getting enough sleep, and I'm just supposed to be like this little Zen person going through and being like, oh, that is just a breakup. I shouldn't be attached. Oh, I have this. I shouldn't be attached, right? And when we have that experience, um, that's actually fucking checking out. That's not being a human being. So a true response, right, um, is, and I'll use the word sort of like instinctual response. Our instinctual response as a human is when something difficult happens, then we feel it, we experience it as pleasant, unpleasant, or neither pleasant or unpleasant. So, someone cuts us off in traffic, we experience that pleasant, unpleasant, neither, right? And so, in this teaching of the two arrows, we're talking about experiences that we interpret as unpleasant. So, it is absolutely part of human survival to perceive things as pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. It's not that you're supposed to perceive everything as neutral when you meditate more or something, right? You're in a body. You're on this planet. You are still a human being. So we're going to have the experience of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And we have these very primal reactions, like fear is huge. I mean, if we think about our survival mechanism, fear is one of those things that drives so much of it, right? And ultimately, we feel fear and it can often grow into anger. It can grow into rage. It can grow into worry and anxiety. It can grow into a feeling of disconnect from others. So, fear, which is a very primal emotion, can arise very instinctively when something happens. And so we can have an experience, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, and have a primal emotion arise. And that does not mean that we're shooting ourselves with the second arrow. Okay? That's all first arrow. First arrow is like things out of our control. And this does not mean that like rage is out of your control, right? This means that initial interpretation, that initial intuitive, instinctive kind of reaction, right? That's part of the first arrow. The second arrow is on top of that, instead of going, there's anger, there's fear, right? Unpleasant, pleasant, neutral. Instead of just that happening, we go, and the reason is because of my self-worth, my lovability, their self-worth, their lovability, judging their personality, judging how the world is unjust, and all kinds of story around that, right? That's the second arrow. All of the story and the suffering that we add on top of it. The other part of the second arrow is we shit on ourselves. We shit on ourselves when we respond in a way that maybe we're embarrassed about or that we feel is out of alignment with our integrity. Yeah. So we have our reaction, like the story I tell in the pod tomorrow. I tell a bunch of stories, so you have to listen to it tomorrow. But the other day, I was with my husband. We were driving into Hope, and we drove by this van that had two stand-up paddle boards leaning against it to dry. And I was like, oh, I wonder where they were using that. And my husband, bless his heart, he says, probably on a body of water like a lake or a river. I'm like, no shit, Sherlock. So, sleep deprived for a week. I had two huge projects I had to do for my postdoctoral program. And then he says this, and I like get so triggered. I'm like, what? Do you think I don't know what a stand-up paddleboard is used for? Like, and I'm like, why would you even say that? Like, of course it's used on water. And I'm like, blah, 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 blah. And then I'm just like, later, I'm feeling like so embarrassed. I'm like, of course he knows that I know what a stand-up paddleboard is used for. We've stand-up paddleboarded together. So I'm like, I don't know why the fuck he said it that way. He just wanted to be elementary about it. Or maybe he was tired and he just like didn't feel like going into it. Because around the area there's only this like in the immediate vicinity, there's like mud flats and this like shallow river. And I was just like, I could have just said, duh. Like I was talking to my friend Peggy about it. I was like, do you think I like respond, like would you have responded this way? She said, I don't think your response was inappropriate, but it was triggered. You think, yeah, absolutely. So that's part of the second arrow is also the shame we feel, right? The embarrassment and the shame about something that we did or how we responded to a certain situation. So, my friends, we have to remember that we have the truth of the suffering. Shit's going to happen to us. People are going to say stupid shit to us and piss us off. People are going to hurt our feelings, right? And by the way, just to keep it clean here, no one makes you feel a certain way. It's our thoughts about what they did or said that causes our suffering, right? But people are going to do things that we're going to interpret in a way that causes us a lot of suffering, right? Things are going to happen in life. Hard things. Like we're going to lose people we love. We're going to have people die. We're going to have people break up with us. We're going to have all those things happen because we're humans. And, I remember when my mother died, first arrow, grief, fear, no more mother, right? But second arrow, I wasn't good enough. I should have been a more kind daughter. I should have done this and that. Guilt, 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 yeah? Second arrow. You see, life is hard enough. Life as a human being is not for the weak. It's like, this is why so many people buffer with over drinking, overeating, escaping with adrenaline sports, you know, zoning out on TV. This is why so many of us act out. It's fucking hard. But let me tell you this, when we stop avoiding the hard feelings, the pain, the suffering, when we stop avoiding that, we can start living fully. Because instead of checking out, zoning out, we can fully experience the first arrow and then get on with experiencing this precious life of ours instead of wasting it fucking shooting the second arrow at ourselves, right? So, this is all about living life to the fullest. And I'm all about living life to the fullest. And we need to really start looking at it from a perspective of, how can I stop creating unnecessary suffering so I can make the most of this precious life? And we have to recognize that it's very, very human to do the second arrow, right? We have our evolutionary response initially, our fear response, our survival response, the fear, the anger, whatever it is, the fight, flight, freeze, right? But we also have our very human response of trying to figure out why it happened. And we create stories, we judge ourselves, we judge other people. We make up stories about how to prevent it from happening again. That's all second arrow. So, life is so hard. Let's not make it harder than it needs to be. Okay, friends? I do a Vipassana meditation on Monday mornings with Kamala Masters. And she said a precept after our session on Monday. She said, may I not act out or speak words that cause harm to other beings. And I was like, oh, I hadn't quite heard it phrased that way. But I really encourage you to set that intention and include yourself as the being that you're not going to cause harm to. All right? May I not act out or speak words to others or myself that will cause harm. May I not act out or speak words that will cause harm to other beings, right? And also, when you are experiencing a difficult emotion, ask yourself, is this first arrow or second arrow? Usually we don't even notice the first arrow until we're well into the second arrow. But when you're suffering, you can ask, am I experiencing first arrow or second arrow? And then bring some kindness, bring some compassion, bring some presence to that suffering. And then we can more effectively move on. Like, I'm having a moment of suffering here. Acknowledge that you're suffering instead of trying to pretend it's not happening or pushing it away or judging why it's happening and all of that, yeah? So we do this human thing and we do the best we can do. Now, don't judge yourself just because you're having a second arrow response, right? We do our best. So may you be kind to yourself. Acknowledge when it is the first arrow hitting. Like, this is hard. I'm sorry. Feeling it fully. Noticing when you're in the second arrow. Rewind. One question I like to ask myself when I'm in that is, why am I choosing to suffer right now? And sometimes I have a good reason for that. Like, I just lost someone important to me. I want to feel this grief. But oftentimes, I phrase it that way in this kind of like very stark way because I want to really see that it's optional. And you can find a question to ask yourself that resonates more with you. But I do like asking myself, why am I choosing thoughts that create so much suffering right now? And from that, I can see my second arrow thoughts. I'm more able to interpret them. Okay? So go forth, notice the first arrows, notice the second arrows, and pop that shit out. We don't need the second arrow. The first arrow is part of life. And may we all not act out or speak in words that cause harm to other beings. Because this world needs some fucking kindness to ourselves, some love and compassion to ourselves and to others, okay? All right. Have an amazing week, y'all. Bye.